What's up, family? How y'all doing? It's your girl, your diva in knowledge. Lady Mocha represent Mocha's Cafe. Day Patterns, where I'm always serving you wisdom, knowledge, and spiritual awareness. One of your most favorite female content creator that is very non-biased, goes in on both men and women, because that's just how we do it over here. Because guess what? All of us got issues. So nevertheless, I definitely want to thank all of you who have recently subscribed. Welcome you to Mocha's Cafe, Day Paris family. You know my A1s from day ones. I definitely appreciate y'all for still being loyal subscribers. So, nevertheless, I want to get into this right away. This actually occurred, I'll say, probably within a month ago, and I just never got into being able to address this particular celebrity squeeze segment, but I thought it was imperative that I did so today. So, for a lot of you who probably graduated between 98 99, somewhere in our ballpark. Back in our era, reality shows was what we lived for. Okay, when we would come home, the first thing we would do is turn on our TVs and turn it to either VH1 or either BET, Jersey Shore, all of these, Love and Hip. Well, no, Love and Hip Hop didn't exist till later on, but nevertheless, we had all of these shows like 106 and Park and these VH1 reality shows, MTV, dating shows, all of the reality shows that basically was the thing back in the day during the middle 90s, early 2000s era, because reality shows were very authentic. It was not scripted, unlike this love and flip flop garbage that they have, and Jocelyn's Cabaret, all of these ratchetness, shows. So anyway, one of the reality shows that some of y'all might remember or not, but I remember one of my personal favorites was The Band. Okay, and The Band was basically a show that was created by Sean P. Diddy, Puffy Combs, whatever you want to call him. And basically what the reality show consisted of was him getting several teenagers from across the world, basically from within the states, to basically audition to become a part of a band that he was creating. So of course, when it comes to these auditions, it can be really, really hectic, standing in the lines, these long lines, because everybody's trying to get put on. Everybody wants to be a star, especially when you're finding out, they're doing auditions in your area. Unless you stay in a country bumpkin area, you probably didn't get that privilege. If you didn't live in a big city like Atlanta, New York, or New Orleans, it's real easy to miss out on opportunities like that. So for those who had the privilege to be able to audition for these type of shows, I'm sure the experience within itself was very fulfilling. So nevertheless, The Band was a very popular show. It had a lot of high ratings, and I remember following the show all the way from the first season. I think they made it up to 2 seasons, 3 seasons. Hell, I can't goddamn remember. But nevertheless, the show was really, really popular, and there was 5 of them who ended up getting selected after all the drama, after all the hiatus, and everything they had to go through to finally get to that point in which Puff Daddy had individually selected these individuals who he felt would definitely be able to utilize them to have a career in which he would be the one to sponsor that. So we all know Puff Daddy. Anybody who's ever been signed to him up under him, we all know their careers flop. The most talented 112. God bless his soul, Biggie Smalls. We don't know if his career would have continued to excel, but I'm sure if had he still been living, he would have branched off and eventually would have got with another record label. I'm sure eventually it would have happened. Shine was also a bad boy, artist. Who else can I think of? Faith Evans, Total. There was I already mentioned Shine. Loon was also a very talented bad boy artist. So the list goes on. Oh, Mace, definitely Mace. A lot of people who were signed under P Diddy fell off. Their career did not progress, and it had nothing to do with talent. because they definitely had the talent, but it had everything to do with the type of label they were under. And everybody knows Bad Boy has always been a very cursed label next to Murder Inc., with Ja Rule and Ashanti, Charlie Baltimore. Those were the two labels that everybody was forewarned about. Do not sign up with Murder Inc., and definitely do not sign up with Bad Boy, because we see where everybody ended up, okay? I just find it very ironic that every artist who dealt with Bad Boy ended up having to find God because he was just that demonic. Shine ended up becoming Muslim. I think even Loon became Muslim. And we knew Mace became a pastor. So it seems like after, signing the deal with the devil, you definitely got to find Jesus Christ himself. Making the Band was a musical reality competition that ran for 12 seasons across several iterations on ABC and MTV. Between 2000 and 2009, Choppa appeared on Making the Band 2 as a member of the band, a hip hop group put together by Sean Diddy Combs while appearing on Making the Bands. Now, for those of you who are not aware of the members that were a part of Making the Band, we had Choppa, who we're going to be discussing. We had Sarah Stokes, which was the one with the vocals, very beautiful woman with the vocals. We also had Babs. She was the female in the group with the bars. Then we had Dylon. He was the one who had that reggae mon type of, flavor that he added. And we also had Ness. Ness was one of the best lyricists, from what most people pretty much have been saying. They feel like he definitely owned his flowers. He was a very good lyrically. He definitely had the bars. He definitely had the flow. One of his issues though on the show was he had a problem, as far as keeping his temper under control, so that was one of the things that kind of made people, not really focus on his talent as much, but he definitely had the flow. Then you had, of course, Frederick, known as Fred. He had his this rugged style, rug thugged out type of style. He was kind of one of the dusty ones in the bunch, but nevertheless, he had his own skills. He had his own sauce that he added to the group. So I would say Puff did a good job as far as picking different elements to make the group interesting. But of course, it became an epic fail. Egos got in the way. Basically, money was the biggest, one of the most critical issues that the band was experiencing. And they were not the only reality show groups who experienced that. Day 26, Danity Kane. I know some of you people in y'all 50s and 60s like, what the hell is all of these goddamn groups? Well, this happened during my era, but I'm going to get to the main topic at hand, but I got to give y'all the background so this makes sense to y'all. So, nevertheless, Choppa, who is one of the cast members that was part of the Making the Band, Choppa brought that New Orleans flavor. He brought that, Nola, what they call it, Nola. He brought that Nola style to the group. He kind of reminded you of a Lil Wayne, Cash Money type of, he had that kind of genre, you know what I mean? His flow was kind of very similar to that type of, hip hop, right? So honestly, that's probably who he should have been signed to, and I think Birdman did at some point take him under his wing, and that for whatever reason did not work. But nevertheless, getting to the point, Choppa was one of those um group members who was part of the Making the Band. As we know, these kids, which they all are grown now, they're grown, they're mothers, their fathers, because again, this is the early 2000s, and a lot of them was probably barely 20, 21 years old at the time. So again, Puff had this to his advantage because these group members, these teenagers, they were young, they did not know the business. A lot of them came from poverty, they came from the struggle, and like anybody else, you're hungry, you're trying to get on, you want to be successful, you want to make it big so you can take care of your family and get out the hood. So they had good intentions, but of course, most people who have been fans of the show, such as myself, we knew it was a disaster, a recipe for disaster as far as them becoming successful, because of all the exposure of how Puff Daddy basically treated them like little prostitutes. I don't want to say that, but he basically he treated them, like slaves in a sense. He knew how hungry and thirsty, Choppa, Sarah, and Babs, and the rest of the group was, how badly they wanted to be famous. And anybody in that position, that would definitely be something that anybody would be capable of doing. You trying to get on, you done audition, you done went through all the processes, and you finally reach that domain in which now you are on TV. People are seeing you fulfill your dream. People are seeing you live out your dream. So the unfortunate part is, it was good. The show was good as far as giving them exposure. So when things didn't work out, they was able to branch off and do other things. But the show did more harm than good, because basically everybody witnessed Puff Daddy make a mockery out of them on national TV. Like the cheesecake incident. There was one episode in which, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy had them, doing different type of obstacles. He challenged them to do certain things on the show, testing them to see how badly they wanted the success, how badly they wanted to be put on. So he kept putting them through the test. And some of the tests were just flat out ridiculous, And the most ridiculous one that stood out the most was when he sent them to walk. And from my understanding, the walk, I believe, was 3 or 4 hours to walk from, I guess, the Bronx or Brooklyn. I think it was Brooklyn, to Junior's Cheesecake, which is in Times Square, New York. And everybody knows, if you ever lived in New York, which I have off and on a couple of years, even something that's 15 minutes away. If you live in New York, 15 minutes away could mean an hour, because it's heavily populated. It's a lot of traffic. And New York is very huge. It's so many boroughs. You got Bed-Stuy, you got the Bronx, you got the Brooklyn, you got Manhattan, you got Queens. It's so many boroughs. You know what I mean? So that was a very long walk. And then to add insult to injury, it was freezing cold. And anybody who lives in New York knows your toes get frozen up going from subway to the ferry, from the ferry to the subway. New York has always been hella cold. So when he made them do that particular challenge, I mean, for some reason, that scene stood out more than anything else on the show. And I remember he gave them the ridiculous challenge of wanting them to prove that they were starving to be artists by walking all the way from Brooklyn to Times Square to get a cheesecake. And on top of that, they had to pay for the cheesecake. He didn't get any money. He didn't get a black card. I'm like, really? I know there was no Uber and no Lyft existed, but he could at least let them catch the cab or something like that. So honestly, I think that particular scene, it made them look weak. Particularly the guys, because when he first, I remember the scene. If y'all look it up on YouTube, just put in "making a band cheesecake scene," y'all will see it. And even though it's old and it's been a century since that show aired, to this day, that particular scene makes people feel some type of way, because they feel, it's like Puff Daddy's ego got the best of him. He knew these kids really wanted to be successful, and he used that to his advantage, and he used their their desperation. He used it as a minstrel show to his advantage. But nevertheless, when you sign up for these type of things, you pretty much put yourself in a position in which people have the advantage of treating you any kind of way, because they see how hungry you are for the success. And either you're going to be man or woman enough to withstand it, or either you're going to have enough pride to say, wait, the hold up now. Some shit I ain't going to do. Yes, I want this, but wait a minute. What does this have to do with the music? So anyway, they initially were mad, And Ness was the only one who kind of stood up to him and said something like, man, we feel like you trying to punk us. Why Ness said that? Puff went off. If y'all don't want it, then y'all can get the fuck on this and that. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, his ego was really inflated, and I really believe to this day, and I hate to say this, I believe that's why Puff Daddy went through so much. He did a lot of people in. He ran over a lot of people that he knew wasn't near as powerful and successful as he was. And you got to be careful. Sometimes karma has a way of coming back to you. So y'all look into it, because I don't want to have to give y'all a whole marathon of the making the band. Just look into it when you get bored and you ain't got a goddamn thing else to do. And a lot of this will make sense to you as to why Choppa is in so much deep water. So anyway, Choppa, MTV's making the band. He was arrested for sex trafficking in Anne Arundel County. Investigators say Kevin Barnes, known as AKA Choppa, now really known as Young City, because he couldn't use that name, being another rapper was named Choppa. But Young City, most known as Choppa, he used his social media following to recruit women for prostitution. Doesn't that sound smart? Young City, a rapper from the MTV reality competition Making a Band, has been arrested in Anne Arundel County on a sex trafficking warrant from police in Las Vegas, Nevada. Choppa, whose real name is Kevin Barnes, was arrested in Linthicum, Maryland on Tuesday, according to police. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department detectives say the 37-year-old Barnes used his large social media following to recruit women to be sex workers. Arundel police say there may be more victims, and if there's any more victims, to please come forward, and definitely drop some tips so that in event there's any other victims that are afraid to come forward, they can definitely be a big asset to this case. But from what I've heard, basically what he messed up was when he basically tried to recruit an undercover officer, you know, into aiding him in his sex trafficking business, if that's what you want to call it. So that's what basically broke the straw on the camel's back. Not only that, he was not smart enough to not try to make business propositions over Instagram. So basically, Choppa, who unknowingly spoke with the undercover detective on the platform. The detective is reported to have started an investigation after finding what they determined to be evidence of potential sex trafficking operation. At one point, Choppa is alleged to have sent a DM to the undercover detective, complete with an offer. Choppa and the undercover detective, who was posing as a sex worker, also reportedly spoke on the phone. As the detective started to stall when told to pack their things for flight to Charlotte, Choppa is said to have demanded a fee of $2,000. Elsewhere, during conversations with the detective, Choppa allegedly invited the individual to the part of his stable. The initial report doesn't make it clear where exactly, but Choppa was arrested in Maryland. So, nevertheless, y'all, Choppa went from being a bad boy artist to a bad boy in real life. Yes, basically, he went from being a shrimp to a pimp. So, what a lot of people have to realize is that when the show ended, Choppa was one of the ones that was voted off the island. There was a lot of discord going on, and basically, it was one issue after another. You know, sometimes when it comes to our people, we don't fall through. You know, we claim we want something, and then when it's time to step up, even though there's a lot of shit you don't want to have to do to prove how bad you want something, unfortunately, it was not enough to make Puff Daddy feel like the group was worth investing into anymore. It was a lot of shit that was going on. Fred was one. For instance, he was one of the ones. He quit the group before the group even got started, and it all just went up from there. Dylan was missing rehearsals. He had court stuff going on. Some of them was rebelling against Puff Daddy, and even though I'm not a fan of Puff Daddy and I don't care for him, at the same time, you know, you can't be biting the hand that feeds you. So a lot of them was basically going against the grain. The only ones that really tried to not challenge them and him and go with the flow was Ness, Babs, and Sarah. But I guess Puff Daddy got to the point where he realized, hell, I can't get one to cooperate. So you know what? I'm gonna just disband this whole thing. It was just one issue after the other. That's why I said if you really want to know about the background of this, I mean, I would suggest that you just watch the Making the Band. They have it right here on YouTube. They have every episode. Somebody uploaded it, so kudos to them. So basically, Chopper was the one that was kicked out. Puff Daddy told him he had to let him go, and ironically, Chopper was always the firecracker. He was always the ticking time bomb, the instigator in the group. You can tell just the little bit of fame he was getting throughout the show. It was inflating his head. A couple of times on the show, they would go to do performances and things of that nature, as part of the show and as part of promoting the group. Chopper was just always the one that was doing too much. He was doing too much. Keep in mind he was young. He was young at the time. He probably was 18, 19 when he did the show, probably a little longer than that. But he was a lot. He was beefing, getting into it with his band members. Him and Ness almost fought a couple of times. Him and Dalon almost fought. He was just a bit much. I don't know what Puff was thinking, allowing these young people to come in and build a band together, because young people, there's too much immaturity, there's too many egos, so it was bound to self-destruct. So nevertheless, I'm sure when Chopper went home and to realize he had to go back to the hood to struggle, I think that really bruised his ego. It took them a long time to get their first check from doing the Making the Band, but when they did get their check, I'm sure it was way more than what they was getting at home. Even if that check was only 10,000, which a lot of us know that's not no money being an artist. But you have to realize when you're coming from the hood and you struggling, you have nothing. $10,000 is a lot. So I don't know how much that check was, but I remember throughout the show, they was becoming very irritated. The group members was becoming frustrated because they had family at home that was struggling, bills behind. I know Fred, he was a father at the time, so he had children, that needed to be provided for. And I guess that's why when Fred did have that break to go home and he realized how much he missed, constantly being out on the road and not being with his kids and his family, he just realized this ain't the life for me. But he ended up bitching about it years down the line, but that's a whole nother story. We ain't gonna talk about that. So anyway, what ended up happening was what I believe made Chopper resort to get into sex trafficking is because I don't think he ever got past being looked at as a failure when the Making the Band group didn't get anywhere. I think it really was devastating for anybody to get that close to stardom and to just have a pull from up under your foot like that. It's definitely a slap in the face. And I think all of them, because in actuality, in the years down the line, a lot of them one by one became very transparent and stated how they felt like they got did dirty in the business. And I believe they all got did in dirty, but at the same time, I also believe that from what I saw on the show, they really didn't want it once they realized how much work had to be put into it. I guess they thought they was just gonna pop bottles, ride in a limousine, and go shopping. I mean, Chopper was already looking at $300,000 watches and shit just on the show, and we're like, "Boy, bye, come on, we know your check only $10,000. You can't even, you don't even have the down payment for them $300,000 watches. You know what I mean?" So anyway, the show allowed them to stunt. Of course, that makes good views. You know what I mean? So I get it. But the actuality is when Chopper had to go back to New Orleans, I'm sure a lot of people pretty much clowned him. Now, excuse me, you may have had one or two that showed him some love and like, man, you did good, or man, that was wrong how Puffy did you, man. You got a bunch of talent, you got a bunch of skills. Puff was wrong. Yeah, I'm sure it was some people that showed him love, but come on now, we talking about the hood. The hood, it is it's just one of those places, unfortunately, where it's magnetic to haters. Anytime you got to go back to a struggling community and you were the one, yeah, you were close to being one of the ones that was going to come from out of the struggle, there's going to always be people that's going to remind you of how big you could have been, how big you should have been, and how big you would have been. Because let's face it, I'm sure some people was low key hating just off the strip on the exposure Chopper had received throughout his duration on making the band. But people ain't gonna tell you that. Instead they're gonna insult you. They're gonna throw jokes. They're gonna throw jabs. They're gonna say some disrespectful stuff. And I believe Chopper went through a lot of that. Now keep in mind when he went back to the hood, he was young, not a full grown man where he could, not understand that, hey, okay, that was my time. I can still grow from this. I can still start a business. I can still, do something successful. You got to realize he looking at this like a young nigga from the hood. So 9 times out of 10, he like, man, shit, I got to go back to this bullshit BS and struggle and I ain't trying to work no job. Once you get a little taste of that fame, sometimes it's very hard to go back to, you know, just being a regular person. And not to say that regular people, we aren't special, but when you've experienced that type of success and to have to go back and do things that average people are doing who never had your success, it's a slap in the face. So for real, I can tell you, I was watching episode of Unsung. I love Unsung. When you have all these artists like Anita Baker and High Five and all of these artists, they tell you about all of the aftermath of fame when you're no longer well known, where people don't give you that same energy they used to when you was really popular, when you was bussing, when your career was popping. And basically a lot of artists ended up discovering, but by the time they discovered, it was too late and it had already been robbed of millions by the time they figured it out. A lot of them had to go back to their normal lives. Some of them adjusted and was able to open their own restaurants, start their own businesses. Some have become producers, started their own record label, and given other people the opportunity, ample amount of opportunity that they felt they were cheated in receiving. We know when Chopper went back to the hood, everybody, come on now, we know dudes was ragging on him. Man, dude had you walking for a cheesecake and you back in a Honda. You driving a Honda Accord, you back with your mama. I'm sure that had to really deflate his ego. So, especially people who haven't had longevity in fame, it's harder for them to readjust back into the norm. Unlike people who have probably been in it for years, done traveled, done did everything, and even though they struggle with adjusting, but I don't think they're adjusting is near as difficult as those who had instant fame and just got and a career dropped just as quick as it picked up. And I think that's what happened with Chopper. He had to go back home to the hood. Niggas was clowning him, ragging on him, making fun of him. To realize that he's back home with his mama, seeing Puff Daddy on the videos. Sitting in the yacht, sipping champagne, popping bottles, and to know you back in the hood. You sleeping on your mama's sofa. The sofa is being propped up by bricks, and covered in plastic. I'm just embellishing. I'm exaggerating. I really don't know his struggle. He did get put on for a minute, like I said, Birdman from Cash Money Brother. Put him on for a hot second. Stunting Like My Daddy, which was really a really nice single, but it came and went so quick. A lot of people don't even know about the damn single. So I think everything he tried, I think in the music industry, nobody took him serious. I think he kind of got blackballed. I think he got blackballed and making the band, everybody seeing them basically kissing ass, only to still get dragged, I think a lot of people didn't take his, career abilities seriously. So I believe at some point he just gave up on music altogether. And he had to find another way to get that money that he felt was entitled to him had his career jumped off. Now I'm surprised, Choppa being from New Orleans, I'm surprised he didn't reach out to Master P. I'm surprised because Master P is from New Orleans, and Master P always strikes me as the kind of man who's always been willing to put somebody on who seems like they have potential. Maybe he did. Maybe Master P saw he was childish or immature, or maybe he didn't think about it. I don't know, but I'm surprised he didn't go that route. But anyway, so I think it bothered him. And being that Choppa already was not educated and he didn't have anything else going on for him other than making a band, I don't know where the bright idea came in from, but he chose to become a pimp. Now, I don't know what type of gift of gab he had to get that type of position, because even a pimp has to have some type of level of intelligence. And when he's trying to manipulate women or get a woman to sell her body so he can profit off of her vagina. But then again, the level, the low level mentality of a lot of these females, it probably didn't take much. Maybe he still had a little bread where he was able to buy them in just enough, give them some trinkets, give them some hors d'oeuvres, just enough to keep them content, in which he was able to make his move and run his game on them. I'm not sure what pimpology he used to influence these females, but most of them looked young. And the women who he was in charge of, who he was pimping, some of them were nice looking women. These were not girls that had that ghetto gag face. These didn't have ghetto gag faces where they look like they've been through a lot, look like they've been ran through like off the block somewhere. These women that he was able to pimp was like Instagram models type. At least that's what I think. I don't know for sure. But this is what he did. And a lot of people figured something was up because everybody from making the band, they been fell off. You don't really see about them. You don't really know what they're up to. Choppa was still up here on his Instagram post, and he was still flexing in private jets. Choppa was still stunting like he was Gucci Mane. Choppa had all of these Instagram photos of Rolex watches, all this bling bling, all of this expensive jewelry only rich people in the industry could afford. So it was already a red flag, like, bro, what is you doing? Because we know you haven't been doing any music since Ike Turner passed. We know you haven't been doing any music. You haven't been doing any tours. You haven't been doing any shows. If he was smart, he should have been at least camouflaging, making it seem like he was making money in other ways. Somewhere he just wasn't bright with it. Not only he wasn't smart by doing shows and doing little tours, whatever, as featuring artists or whatever, but he had the audacity to make a deal with an undercover. I mean, then on top of that, you advertising your women through social media. Bruh, you can't be serious. With his mind being that simple, it was bound to catch up sooner than later. He really was not thinking, or maybe he got so cocky and beside himself. Maybe he felt like, shit, ain't nobody gonna do nothing to me. I'm Choppa. This man was posting all his moves. But again, a lot of this comes from, as I stated before, I believe a lot of people was dragging him and made a mockery out of him and reminded him of his failure with making the band, with Puff Daddy dropping him. Now keep in mind, Puff Daddy did keep two of them out the group. He was one of the ones that got dropped, and he was the first one to get dropped. So can you imagine his ego? And I think he just could not go back to the hood and face that type of ridicule. So his thing was, I'ma make up for it. I know y'all niggas dragging my name, y'all making a mockery, out of my 15 minutes of fame with making a band, but I'ma show y'all I'ma still be big. I'ma still hit it big. It ain't gonna be through the music. If I got to become a pimp to redeem my lifestyle and my credibility that I didn't fall off, well, that's what I'm gonna do. And again, I just don't think he could ever go back to that. I'm not specific. I don't have the details on the specific as to how he started his pimping business or whatever so have it. But one thing I do know is that at this point in time, it is not a good look for him. Sex trafficking is one of the worst criminal offenses you could ever be charged with. Him getting out of this is like a camel squeezing through the eye of a needle. That's how slim his chances are even getting out of this. I mean, if he does, it'll be by the grace of God. Maybe God does have mercy and he does have grace. I've seen criminals get off with all type of things. I'm a ex-former officer, so I've seen people who I swore was going to get nailed to the cross only to get a bond, end up eligible enough to just be on parole and go back home. I mean, because of COVID is still in the mix, so a lot of these prisons and jails, they're not really throwing a hammer at a lot of these offenders unless you are a habitual offender. You're a high risk to society. But sex trafficking is a very serious offense because, in a sense, you are a high risk to a high threat to society. You're a high risk factor because you're dealing with women and in some cases, some children. So it's not one of those type of offenses that the laws take lightly. So I don't see this being really good for him. I really think that instant fame, he never got past it. Choppa is not that old. He's not even quite in his 40s yet. So I just really think he struggled with that 15 minutes of fame and going back to being a nobody. I mean, at least that's how he felt. He probably felt like he was going back to being a nobody. And, having to go back to the hood and, niggas being petty like females, probably been very disrespectful, said some things to really hurt his feelings, about his career, you know, uh, basically coming to a halt before it even started. And people can be pretty cruel. They like to make a fun out of people's failures. They like to make a mockery out of your journey sometimes. I think that had a lot to do with what provoked him to go into becoming a pimp and a sex trafficking. But regardless of his reasons, it's not going to be enough to convince the judge or the jury that it's justifiable. There's nothing he can possibly say. He all that, well, I came up in the hood. I was in poverty. I came from a single parent household. The poverty struggle line, the poverty struggle story. It's not going to cut it for him in this situation. It's a very unfortunate situation, but I can't really empathize with him. I empathize with the women who he used and took advantage of. But at the same time, I will say this: a lot of these women are not innocent. Um, they know exactly what they're signing up for. And believe it or not, you have some women out here that are sex fiends. They love to have sex for money. As much as sometimes, as a woman, we're so quick to empathize with women and make it seem as if women are automatically victims because they're women. But I personally know some women who love to hoe. I know some women who get joy out of selling a vagina to make another man happy. Some women love making a man happy. even if it means putting their own risk and their own health at stake. It's some women who will do anything to please a man. Not every woman is a victim. But guess what? These courts don't want to hear that. These judges don't want to hear that. These DAs, district attorneys, they definitely don't want to hear that. So this is not a good look for Choppa. Sometimes you have to realize, sometimes in life, even your hopes, your desires, your dreams, sometimes they just don't work out. And it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Sometimes God is protecting you. A lot of people in the industry who have made it big, there was a lot that came with that. Sometimes you got to sign a deal with the devil in order to make it big. You got to be willing to do drugs. You have to be willing to partake in homosexuality. You got to be willing as a woman to sleep with all type of multiple men to get to the top. It's a lot that you have to do in order to get ahead, you know, and unless you're willing to commit to the devil, your career is not going to get far. If you already felt like a nobody before you got a taste of the industry, only to get a taste of the industry and have to go back, you're going to feel like a nobody even more. So I think that's what happened with your boy Choppa. I'm sure the rest of his band members, I'm sure they fell off. They went through the shenanigans of being talked about, being dragged. Matter of fact, Fred, he recently was dragged when he went viral discussing how Puff Daddy, treated him, Choppa, and the rest of the bandmates since making the band. So a lot of people made a mockery with Fred, and I'm sure a lot of what Fred was saying, he was speaking a lot of truth, saying, the stuff that Puff Daddy made them do, it wasn't nothing like illegal or immoral, but just the things that they had to go through, and they felt like they was being punked. They was being, treated like underclassmen, in the presence of the echelon, people that have high status, and to be in that circle and know people really don't perceive you on the same level. They only perceive those who helped you to get on that same level. You still looked at as the bottom of the barrel. And he's made a lot of significant points. He said a lot of interesting things. So we knew Fred wasn't totally lying about Puff Daddy snaking him, through the show. But at the same time, I cannot sit up here and just slash and decapitate Puff Daddy, because if you watch the show, you will see they was really acting like Negroes with no class, fighting in the studio, tearing up, 30, 40, $40,000 studio equipment. They brought the hood with them to New York. So, it is what it is. You know what I mean? I'm sure if everybody had the opportunity to do over, they probably would have done things differently. Can't really fault them for it. Puff Daddy was young too. I mean, he was a grown man, but he probably didn't know as much then as he knows now about the business. He was always greedy, but that we know. But he probably would have done things differently, seen the direction everybody's career went. He might feel responsible for that in a sense. And then again, he may be one of them heartless ass Negroes where he like, shit, y'all lost. Oh well. But he had his own problems to deal with, He ended up losing things that his money couldn't buy, so you got to be careful what you put out there. Karma has everybody's address, So anyway, I'm gonna get ready to shut it down, y'all. Leave y'all comment below. Let me know what y'all think about the situation with Choppa. Do y'all have any other perspective on what made y'all think resort to him pimping, or are y'all pretty much thinking the same thing? I'm thinking that maybe it had a whole lot to do with him falling off and having to go back to the hood and be ridiculed, and people to kind of stun on you, and make you feel bad about your failures. And he felt like, I got to prove myself. I got to still hit it big. I got to make it seem like I still got it, like I'm somebody. Let me know what y'all think. I'm interested in, hearing your perspective. Before you leave, before you exit the stage, please hit that like button. I would appreciate that. It's free. It's not going to charge you anything. For those of you who want to donate, I don't have to be live for you to donate. You can cash at me at $DymondGyrl. $, that's my cash app. You will see my picture there. So unless you see my picture, do not send anything. And any little thing helps. $2, $5, I don't care. struggle streamers. Any blessing is a blessing to us. So anyway, y'all, I'm gonna shut it down. Y'all take care. Be blessed.